Yeah. Okay, so I will be talking about navigating a difficult data set, and this is based on my capstone project for uh, University of Washington Tacoma's Master's in Geospatial Technology, which I am a recent graduate of. I am not a librarian, but this is sort of along the lines of personal organization and automating some of the repetitive tasks and transforming a data set that's not really organized for your purposes into something that you could more easily make use of. And that's my portfolio website there. I'll sum that up, but yes, this is my first NACIS, so it goes well. And I'm very interested in the environment and history and the history of the environment and how to create better understanding and foster more understanding about those two and the relationship between them. So looking ahead, I'll be talking a little bit about my process for using Python scripting to automate some of the data curation for my project from a very large and useful data set that I found. So it'll go through a little bit of the data collection, downloading, the folder and file manipulation and creation, and geoprocessing actions of projecting and merging. I'm not a Python expert. Many of you might know more than I do, but if you have not cut your teeth on Python, this is a great way to, a great kind of place to start for your own uses and purposes. So in my undergrad, I attempted to create a interactive and static tool of mapping the change of the Cordilleran ice sheet, which was the historical ice sheet that covered the Pacific Northwest during the Ice Age of approximately 20,000 to 10,000 years before the Common Era. So that is the static interpretation of my first pass of the project, just using some color symbology and layering to try to explain how it progressed from a larger coverage to a smaller coverage and open up some interesting features such as the corridor that opened up when the Western Laurentide, which covered the most of North America, separated from the Cordilleran. And I created a little animated visualization. Some of it got cut off there, but that was just focusing on that little loop. And when my capstone for Masters of Science in Geospatial Technology was paired with sort of an attempt at how can I explain such a long 10,000-year process in a way that might resonate with users and allow some more user control and allow users to spend more time with individual years and kind of learn about the changes that way. So getting a reading on the user experience of interactive visual and narrative text. So the main problem was the organization of the data set. It was a wonderful data set, really useful and such a wealth of information, but it was designed to, I don't think, to be used on the scale that I was necessarily hoping to use it. So it was from the Quaternary Glaciations Extent and Chronology. There was a book report about it done in Elsevier, Nature, Science, and they have a online website with the coverage of pretty much the entire world. And the coverage is split into these quadrangles for all of North America, all of the world, labeled with an alphabetical kind of label system and a number system. And they are all posted individually, pretty much, or occasional letter groupings. And if I wanted to try to do all of North America, I didn't want to click so dang much. So Python and some libraries was my source of doing that, because I did not want to trust some of those download managers that are suggested elsewhere. I'm going to brick my computer if I use something like this. So I decided to continue with Python, and I also had to do Python for my classes. So the two coincided really well. And initially it scared me. There was a lot of information, and my process was just to break down the problems I needed to solve the best I could, problem solving in general. And I summed up these kind of main processes, which was to download all the data quickly, easily, and safely, unzipping all these data sets into a working folder, reorganizing the shapefiles I wanted to use so I could merge them by year for the 500-year intervals between 20,000 and 10,000 years BCE, and then merge by those year intervals so I could get a representation that takes it from its furthest extents to its smallest extents. And I used a number of Python libraries and applications to do that. One of the most useful was the Beautiful Soup library, which is available online, and it basically just interprets an HTML web page, breaks it down into something you can build a list of which downloadable files are present on that web page, and hit run, and it just chugs through them, and you end up with a nice collection of files. And there are other, some of the other processes I used were a zip file, which is another library that just automatically unzips things, and you define the folder path you want it to go to. And some other work was done in Shuttle to move things around. And for merging, I called the ArcPy library in Python, which did a lot of the heavy lifting for me. And I used those applications in the Python side of things. There were, so this is kind of, it's very hard to see, but this is sort of how the folders looked like after I had acquired them. It had the alphabetical and numerical organization on the left by the quadrangle, and with each one of those quadrangle folders, a whole selection of 500-year intervals. Sometimes there was one that was, 700 instead of 500. I based, I guess, on the actual truth of where they could determine the last extent of the glacier. But that did create some problems. I would love to tell you all that I wrote this code and ran it once and it all went beautifully, but no, and there were some gaps like good old Greenland there, which, reasonably, it's had an ice sheet for the majority of the time that we've looked at this area, so there was no real coverage representation for those. And there was these consistent holes and some incongruent naming conventions. So a huge majority of it was done with that automated geoprocessing, but a lot of it I did have to do some hands-on geoprocessing to plug those holes, as I called it. And so here is a little GIF of the outcome of my project. And this is actually used in, I made this in Mapbox, which is a good online web mapping tool. And user controls the right-hand scroll. As they scroll down through events, it transforms from one extent to another, and includes the large glacial lakes, such as Glacial Lakes Missoula. And the intent of this was to have a educational experience building tool for people to use and kind of guide themselves through the changes in the environment, and go back if they missed something or wanted to look at how the glacial lakes appeared or disappeared as the two ice sheets separated. And I think this is a link that can do that, but you get the picture from it. And then these are just, I did have a section where I got some user feedback on a heavy text variant and a low text variant about which one would be more effective, which with the 18 different sort of slides of years, the less text was a little more popular, and more people seemed to resonate with the information presented in those. So basically what I learned from this project is just to be encouraged, find a simple place to start, be comfortable with the discomfort of having to plug holes and break things down over and over again, and hopefully not break down yourself. And if I manage to come out of this with a master's degree somehow, I'm sure others can definitely use these sort of management profiles or management programs to ease some tension on the if you're working with an enormous data set. I ended a little bit early, so thank you, and if you have any questions, feel free to ask. Yes?